Welcome, welcome. If you're just now joining, please enter your location that you're tuning in from and maybe what organization you're with in the chat box. We will be using the chat box quite a bit as our main way of communicating. Looks like we got several folks coming on. And as far as whether you want your camera on or not, that's totally up to you. Either way is fine. All right, we got Kelly Jo from Tifton. Hello. Susan Myers from Lilburn. Hello. You'll be excited to see I have a butterfly shirt on today for this wondrous occasion. Ashley, you're just south of me in Pike County. I'm in Griffin.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Well, I live in Griffin, so
oh, do you?
I do. I wonder how close we are right now. Yeah.
Wow, that's funny.
Isn't that weird?
See, we would have never had a clue if we didn't do all this typing in the chat box.
Oh, I'm gonna have to talk to you at some point afterwards. That's amazing.
I would love to do that.
Yeah.
Welcome, Corey from Atlanta, Jen from Cobb County. Roswell, yay, High Meadows. I think I delivered some coloring books to you.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the pandemic. Oh, great to see you again. That's so funny. Wow. It's like this is your life on virtual workshop time. Yeah. Okay. Well, we've got a fair number of folks, it looks like. Let's see how many participants we've got. We're at 11. That's good. Okay. So welcome to your very first session with the Environmental Education Alliance Conference. My name is Linda May, and I am an outreach coordinator for the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, the Wildlife Resources Division. And I've been with them for 25 plus years as an environmental educator in some capacity or another. More recently, I've been working on urban programming, basically Metro Atlanta, but I grew up in Roswell in the 70s and 80s. And so this whole part of the state, you know, around Metro is my home. I've seen it obviously change a lot over the years, but it definitely, there was the woods at the end of my street that was kind of my space to explore when I was a kid. And those things have never left me. So I've never really fully grown up, and to be able to share that with others, that joy that I found through nature is just super exciting. There's never a dull day. It's all a blast, and I imagine a lot of you feel the same way. So as you can imagine, the Georgia DNR is quite a bit, it's a little bit different culture than maybe some of the nonprofit organizations. It's more traditional, very science-based. All of that is good. But sometimes we lose track of just the essential things that it takes to connect to nature. You know, we're very interested in getting messaging across and encouraging people to buy licenses, because that funds a lot of the conservation work that we do, and all of those are great things. But we don't want to skip over the basics. And that's kind of what we're going to focus on today, is just getting down to the nitty gritty. Like, what is the secret sauce, so to speak, of connecting folks to nature? And that's what we're going to focus on. So during this presentation, if at any time you want to type something in the chat box, feel free. I'm actually going to be encouraging that quite a bit. So this won't just be this stagnant presentation where I'm just lecturing to you. You guys have enough of that. But I want it to be, engaging and fun for you guys too. And we're actually going to be going outside at some point too, because you'll be in front of the computer enough, and it is a gorgeous day outside. So we want to take advantage of that. All right. So let's see. Can everybody see my screen okay? Let me make sure that's good. Thumbs up. Thank you. I love it. All right. Well, let's see. I am super excited that David Sobel was our keynote speaker, because I know his works have been out for a while, but I just recently came across them and was just like, after, like I say, 25 years of doing this stuff. And I think anecdotally, I knew a lot of what he was saying was true, but I don't know, it just hit me in a hard way. So I just wanted to give him some props for his work beyond ecophobia. I've got this book here. It's from like the mid-90s, I think. And you can find some of his work online too, if you just do a Google search. But because what he said this morning was awesome, but it was just like, you can take a deeper dive for sure, and it's definitely worth your time. Also, Michelle Doerr, she's a trained wildlife biologist out of Minnesota, but more recently has ventured into the world of ecopsychology, which is, I think David touched upon it a little bit, kind of like nature therapy and the science behind that. And I did a workshop with her last summer. It was called Becoming Alive in Nature. And it was through the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. And I just gleaned so much from that workshop. And I was like, I've got to share this with folks. So that's kind of, her workshop was probably the main source of inspiration for me doing this session now. So I'm going to share a lot of neat tools that I learned there. And then more recently, I attended a U.S. Forest Service workshop, virtual, with the Children's Forest Network. And they had some really interesting tips and tools that I learned. So, as environmental educators, that's what we do. I mean, we certainly try and be as connected to nature as we can ourselves, but we want to share whatever we can learn with others and just kind of build each other up and inspire each other. So hopefully this session will do that for you. All right, so our main focus as environmental educators, I think you'll agree, is to try and create environmental stewards and increase environmental literacy. And if you look at the screen here, we've got the vision that's on our EEA website. It says EEA supports environmental educators throughout Georgia to achieve our vision of a statewide culture of environmental literacy and stewardship. So that's pretty loaded. And I wanted to see what environmental literacy means to you. If that's what we're all working towards with our audiences, whether it's school children or adults or whoever, garden clubs, then what does that mean to you? What does environmental literacy mean to you? And I mean, you can just, it doesn't have to be a formal answer, just whatever brainstorm comes to your mind, just go ahead and type in the chat. And let's see what you guys come up with. I see some folks are typing. Okay, Ashley says, instill love and appreciation of the natural world, grounded in empathy and compassion. I like that. Knowledge and caring about our planet from Jen. Susan, awareness, knowledge, appreciation, informed decisions. Understanding what happens in nature or the processes from Leanne. And the language, how to identify things. Sure, that's part of it. And then Cara says, Environmental literacy makes me think of having a working knowledge of information about nature, systems, facts, and understanding how everything is connected. Then there's the side of caring and sustainable action. Yes. Okay, so you guys, I mean, we're all pretty much on the same page. It's very comprehensive, isn't it? You say those terms all the time. It's kind of good to focus on what does that really mean? So let me give you the NAAEE definition as well, and it pulls out a lot of what you guys were saying. It says an environmentally literate person is someone who both individually and together with others makes informed decisions concerning the environment, is willing to act on these decisions to improve the well-being of other individuals, societies, and the global environment, and participates in civic life. Well, that's a pretty tall order. And all of those things are super important, and that is the holy grail of what we would hope that any of our program participants would reach. And it's what we try and practice ourselves. But we can't overlook the importance of pulling at heartstrings. A lot of that was emphasized in David's keynote earlier, was you can't overlook just letting kids play, just letting kids connect. If it's too structured, you're missing the point. So, you know, if you really want someone to be motivated to do all of these things that are in this definition here, you can't just deliver fact-filled lessons. Feelings are definitely the seat of motivation. And so, you know, we get so caught up in our rat race of life, you know, and work, that sometimes we miss all that. We're looking to check off boxes. We forget to just reconnect with ourselves and with the environment around us. So we're actually going to spend a fair amount of time doing that today. Let's see. And so first we're going to start off with just thinking about how did all of you get to be in the career space that you're in right now? Probably didn't happen by accident. So let's think about maybe one of your earlier childhood experiences. It could have, you know, anything that had a profound effect on you, something that you experienced that you remember today and carry with you through your environmental education work today. Maybe not, it's not necessarily at the forefront of your mind, but it's there. It's a driving, motivating force. So I invite you to just type a brief description in the chat box now. So yeah, take a moment to think about it. Kind of pulled that out of left field, didn't I? Okay, gardening with your mom. That must have had a profound effect on you, Susan, because you're definitely still doing that. Ah, camping trips, yes. And with your family. I did that with Girl Scouts mostly. Explore national parks. Very nice. Ah, mushroom hunting. Wow, whale watching with Greenpeace. Oh, Ashley built a hut and climbing trees. That was that wild nature play that David spoke about. All right, Cara grew up in the beach near Florida, so spending time in the water, collecting seashells, large forested yard, just hanging out in the woods. Yes, I'm obsessed with animals too. That had a lot to do with where I am today. Oh, in kindergarten, your Leanne's class germinated seeds in the classroom and taped the bags on the classroom window so you could see the plant growth each day. That is awesome. And I remember doing something similar, but we actually used those old milk cartons and cut them in half, and those were our little planters. And then we stuck them in the windowsill at my elementary school in Roswell. All right, living on a farm. Okay, that's certainly certainly gives you some good exposure, playing in the fields and caring for young critters. So I see all these are pretty good memories. I don't see anything horrifying here. Oh, growing butterflies and sharing with your kindergarten class. Okay. Chris is from Louisiana, so he went camping with his dad in Wyoming every year. I heard his stories about growing up near the mountains. Yep. So there were some stories passed along from one generation to the next. So a lot of one common theme I see here is not only that you had good experiences, but also that you had some sort of mentor. There was some free play out there, obviously, too. You know, for me growing up, that wild nature play was with friends who also enjoyed it. And they were actually a little more adventurous than I was. I was pretty shy and quiet and a very compliant child. So I almost felt like I needed to keep to myself and contain myself. And they helped me kind of blossom out of that. And there were some adults too. So can you imagine if you didn't have that? Would you be where you are today? Would you be environmentally literate? Would you be in this sort of career and trying to teach others? And did it contribute to your happiness? So, you know, not everybody has those privileges to grow up in the ways that we did. Not that it was perfect, you know, I'm sure there were some other things that didn't go as well, but you still have those good memories to go back to, and those good experiences that pull at those heartstrings. So, and one thing that I didn't hear anybody say that they were excited about was that they learned about climate change as a kid. So one really neat quote that I enjoyed from David Sobel's book is "No tragedies before fourth grade." So he is a big proponent of teaching children to love and appreciate nature before putting global problems on them. So, you know, that can come later, maybe better for middle school, high school, but you really need to get children to have empathy, as someone mentioned earlier, for nature before you ask them to save everything. So, because what can actually happen psychologically is when someone gets too overwhelmed by something, and not only does it stress them out, but they tend to just disassociate. Like, I just don't even want to deal with that anymore. So yeah, then you ask them to care about something that they've kind of cut off about because it just was too overwhelming. Okay, Mary says, I observed a kindergarten teacher scare kids to get them away from bees at the pollinator garden. That's not good. And even scared her own son, who would not go near bees for a year. So yes, children are watching us at times we may or may not realize. And so that's kind of the whole point of this program too, is to really do a self-evaluation. You know, there's plenty of opportunities to learn how to do, you know, teaching strategies and that sort of thing. I'm sure we'll have a lot of that during the conference here. But I think it all has to start with you, and just kind of maybe use this session as a reboot and just to really pay attention to yourself and what your connection with nature is like. And once that's really solid, the rest will happen organically. You won't be scaring children about the bees. I mean, you probably don't do that anyway, but maybe there's something else that you didn't realize you were doing that could be harmful. And there's no judgment here at all. We're all like on this big spectrum of life and learning curve, as they say. But it's good to evaluate yourself and just for your own mental well-being, because let's face it, teaching day in, day out, that can be really draining, especially if you're like a highly sensitive person and really super connected to nature, and just there again can get overwhelmed if you're not careful. So we're going to kind of reboot here. All right, so we are going to do an activity that's going to require a pen and paper. So if you need a moment to grab that, feel free. And you will, at some point later on when we go outside, you'll need either a clipboard or just a book or something to lean on. What we're going to do now is what's called a sensory awareness inventory. And like I said, we're going to just kind of think about ourselves, do some self-reflection here on things that bring us pleasure. We did that a little bit earlier, just with the childhood experiences, but this could be just in general. So this chart, it's one that I can provide after the workshop, but we're going to take about 5 minutes, maybe a little more if you're really got good brain juice flowing here, and just brainstorm things that give you pleasure in each of these categories. So things that you see or sight, things that you hear, things that you taste, things that you touch, and things that you smell. And so just kind of brainstorm, and it doesn't have to be in any particular order. You don't have to do all the sight ones at one time. Just as they kind of free flow in your mind, stick them in one of these categories. And we'll do a little bit of discussion after that. So I'm gonna set my timer for about 5 minutes, and then as you feel ready, you can even type some of these things in the chat box. And one of my workshops, they actually played music while this was going on. So I'm going to see if I can find something on my iTunes library.
Linda, can I ask you, are we listing things that we like hear and smell that we enjoy now, or just in general anytime?
Just in general, anytime is fine. Yeah, just whatever comes to mind.
And specifically outdoors or just in general?
It could be in general.
Okay.
Yep. Good questions. All right, take a few moments if you need to finish up. And it looks like a few folks were typing, so we'll give a moment for that. Yeah, these are great. Ashley, I'm definitely enjoying the songbirds. Their sounds kicking up in the morning, this springtime, it's like intoxicating, isn't it? And I actually have barred owls that are hooting at night too. I mean, there was one that flew by my bedroom window. I swear he had to be like maybe 2 feet away last night as he was hooting. And I was like, how do you fall asleep to that? I'm like ready to go outside and play, you know. But yeah, lots of neat. The smell of the barn with horses. That's probably good for you, but maybe not for some others. Different smells have different connotations for different people. Leanne mentioned ripples in the water. Birds in general have been lifeblood during this pandemic. Oh yes, the increase in birding and just backyard gardening and like creating wildlife habitats. There's definitely been a surge in interest in all that with the pandemic, which is a great thing, you know, despite all the issues we've had with the pandemic, obviously, but there have been some good things that came out of it too. Oh, Karen's got owls too. Kelly Jo, hearing laughter, yes. Rain on the roof. Singing, that's very nice. Streams. Ah, smells, rich soil and cinnamon. Those are great, Susan. Well, keep them coming in if you like. We can all read your comments in the chat if you have something really fun you want to share. But the longer your list is, the happier you probably are, because these are all things that you're grateful for. And studies have shown that gratitude is a very powerful force in our happiness. And if we're not connected to these senses on a real basic level, then we won't have those things to be grateful for. It really takes some focused attention sometimes. You can also use this chart as a little bit of an assessment, either for yourself or your students, to know how strong their connection to nature is. So what I want you to do now is look at your chart and figure a percentage of things on this chart that are related to something in nature. And it doesn't have to be directly, it can even be indirectly. You know, if something that brings you pleasure is derived from nature, in other words. So take a moment just to do a little inventory. You'll have to count the total number of entries that you have, and then make a little tick mark by the ones that are nature related. And then figure a percentage. Oh, wow, Susan's already got hers, 100%. Woohoo! You are nature queen. That's wonderful. So yeah, I know when I did this activity, it took me a little while to figure it out because I was all over the place. Yes, touch components with the salamanders. Wonderful. So yeah, take a moment to do that. And when you're ready, go ahead and type it in the chat box, please. Got some high percentages here. That's great. Very good. 17 out of 20. And like David was saying, you know, and as we've heard through other mentors in the environmental education world, the disconnect is real. And I'm hoping that actually with the pandemic that some more folks got outside than normal, but it would be interesting to see what this list would look like for kids these days. You know, do they share our love for nature, or are they putting down information about the latest video game? I have no idea. I haven't actually done this since I learned this activity, but it would be really interesting to see. So, like I said, this can be a real fun activity for kids to do, but also just a neat, quick assessment tool for you to get a feel for who you're dealing with in your classrooms or with your audience. Yes, Mary mentions, I also wonder how this activity could differ with kids who have sensory processing disorders. So yeah, that's a really great question. And so another that brings to mind, you know, that not everybody experiences nature the same. So, you know, for the longest time, I felt like, well, I have all these wonderful things going on for me. Surely that's going on for other people, and I just want them to experience it. Well, maybe they don't have the same experiences. We all have different childhood experiences. We all have different ways of taking in these different senses. And this activity kind of highlights that a little bit. All right, we're going to do another assessment, and it's called the Nature Relatedness Scale. All right, so this is another tool that can kind of give you an idea of how connected to nature you are. The original test is actually, or, you know, self-assessment, I should say. It's not really a test, but the original quiz is 21 questions long. But for time's sake, we're just going to do this shortened version that is only 6 questions long. And you don't necessarily have to write all this down. You will get all this, these resources after the session. They'll be available to you. So just take a moment and see if you can put some numbers to these questions here. So you're gonna put a number, a score from 1 to 5, where 1 is disagrees strongly, all the way up to 5 agrees strongly with each of these statements. So my ideal vacation spot would be a remote wilderness area. I won't read them out. You can see them. I'll give you a moment to think about it. And you can share your score if you want, or you don't have to. This might be a little more personal. So what you'll do once you've got a total, you'll just divide it by 6 to get your score. And you can take this quiz online too, with that hyperlink there. But essentially, the higher score you have, that's correlated with greater happiness and well-being. And that was also something that David Sobel brought out in his presentation. And you know, if you think about it, I mean, this planet, the environment is our home. Yes, we've built all of these structures around and we've put our thumbprint on the earth in some really creative ways. But as far as our fundamental biology is concerned, it makes sense that the more connected to nature we are, the happier we would be. I think it's a biological innate thing, but some people, you know, have gotten away from that. Perhaps you have. I mean, I know I have at times. And so it's good to just kind of reboot, reconnect, especially if you're feeling burned out in your environmental ed work. You need to find inspiration. For me, a lot of times, you know, that could be others, but most often on a daily basis, it's spending time outside. So, and to do that, I mean, not just spending time outside, but also like being present. So what does being present mean to you? It's necessary in order to fully embrace the nuances of nature, but what does that really mean to you? And you can type in the chat box. All right, Camille says it can be challenging, but to me it means not worrying about what's on your to-do list or what you did yesterday. Appreciating that moment for what it is and what it brings you. Susan, yes, slowing down is super important. When Cara says, I think when I'm totally engrossed in something, I'm unaware of the fact that I'm not thinking about other things, then I'm fully present. Okay, second grade, Mary. Yeah, you guys talk about engaging your senses. That's good. And Ashley, yes, almost a meditation of sorts. You know, some people have an aversion to that word. I don't know if it's got different, just like, you know, languages for different words for people have different meanings. If you say the word mindfulness, some people kind of freak out, but there's none of this language, or at least none of these activities, are meant to have any kind of religious, you know, connotation. It's for each individual to give meaning to it. So Kelly says, I tend to get in my head. So being present is making myself getting out of my head. Yes. Quieting all the scrambling going on, which is really hard to do sometimes. It is definitely challenging. And enjoying what is surrounding me. Yes, Jen, very hard to do with our multitasking lives. I think the status quo is rat race, you know? And so to kind of bucket that it's hard, it's challenging. It's not, we've been conditioned for the rat race. So yes, we have to slow down, as Susan said. We have to try and not, like, show some self-compassion if you have all these crazy thoughts coming in. Don't get mad at yourself, like, why can't I get rid of these thoughts? You know, if you ever have tried, ever had trouble with insomnia, you just get more mad at yourself when you can't fall asleep. So it's counterproductive. So we're actually going to do a few activities next. I guess coping techniques for when you've got squirrel brain and you could use a little de-stressing and just ways, like I say, to reconnect yourself with nature. We call these grounding techniques. because they're stabilizing techniques. And there again, there's no fancy undertones to any of these. It's really just getting down to basic biology. And the way we can best be present is to try and focus on the nuances around us and get out of that autopilot zone. Even if you set your timer just for 5 minutes, like the world is not going to fall apart in 5 minutes. Whatever emails are coming through, whatever's going on in your phone, whoever's screaming, for 5 minutes, you can probably put all that to the side. It will be there when you get back. So I learned some breathing. Yes, I learned some basic techniques from that U.S. Forest Service workshop. And these are things we've probably heard before, but we don't always make time to do them. So, and for some people, they're feels a little vulnerable to do these things. So it's up to you how comfortable if you want to participate. We're actually going to go through these 3 right now. And you can, if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, you can, or if you just want to have a downward gaze, whatever is most comfortable for you. So the first thing we're going to do is simply take a couple of deep, intentional breaths. And as you're breathing in through your nose, just think about the sensations of doing so. Where do you feel your breath? Maybe in your nasal passages, maybe in your chest, maybe in your stomach. And then as you breathe out through your mouth, kind of like a sigh, and feel your breath. Just focus on your breath. And just take a deep breath in, try and fill those lungs as much as you can. You've probably been tense and didn't even know it until you take that deep breath in. And then when you exhale out your mouth, think about all that stale air that's been trapped inside of your lungs for so long and just needed to get out. And then take just a few more moments for a few more breaths. And the more you focus on your breathing, the actual sensations that are happening while you're breathing, those thoughts often will melt away, they'll subside. If you feel a thought popping in, just there again, go back to the sensations of your breathing. Where do you feel the breath? Do you feel it, like I say, inside your nose, in your chest? When you exhale, are you feeling it on your lips? And it's all so simple, but it really can relax you in a very quick and easy way. You can also, if you start to feel stiff in your chair, you can stand up and kind of raise your arms when you breathe in and put them down when you breathe out. So yeah, there's just different basic things like that you can do just to, if you're feeling stressed, it's so simple, but those deep breaths, even if you just do 3 of them in the middle of the day or whenever you're feeling tense, it makes such a big difference. Funny story, actually, when I first bought my Apple Watch years ago, it had this feature on it to breathe. And yeah, Ashley's nodding her head. I think it was just preset or something. So I remember being at the copier at my office, social circle, and the watch was going off and it says breathe. And I was like, oh my God, am I not breathing? And then everyone around me was like, are you okay? Like, I'm fine. But it's crazy that that's just indication that even technology realizes that we're so stressed that we have to be reminded to breathe. So if it's by your watch, fine. I just thought that was pretty funny. All right, so the next one, we don't necessarily have to do this one, but just the body scan is similar. You can just breathe normally and then just kind of focus on the sensations from your head to your toe. Just start in your head, and whatever you're feeling, you don't necessarily have to give judgment to it. You may have an ache or a pain, but just kind of be a casual observer of what's going on in your body. And so that's another technique. All right, this next one I really like. It's a stream visualization. So we are going to actually do this one. All right, so just get comfortable in your chair. And like I say, you can close your eyes or just look down or whatever's comfortable for you. But visualize yourself sitting next to a beautiful stream. Perhaps you're sitting on a rock next to the stream or on the bank above the stream. Imagine what the stream looks like. You're just sitting next to the stream and observing the beauty around you. You hear the sound of the water, maybe some birds, maybe the leaves rustling in the trees, or other sounds in the forest. So just sit and breathe normally, whatever's comfortable for you, and imagine what it's like to sit in this space. Maybe think of some of the things you smell there, some of the fresh greenery. Feel the sunshine on your skin. If you have thoughts pop up, try to imagine placing that thought on a leaf and then putting the leaf in the stream. Watch the thought as it slowly moves downstream until it's eventually out of view. And if you have another thought pop up, you can do the same thing. Hey guys, let's put on mute. Sorry for the interruption. I'm not sure who's not muted. So yes, you can take that thought and put it on a leaf and allow it to float softly down the stream. And if you want, your stream doesn't have to be slow. It could be fast, rushing water even. So your thoughts could go downstream really fast if that's what's going on for you right now. So stay with this visualization for a moment and think about every time a thought comes into your head. Maybe it's a planning thought, a worry thought, or just a random thought. And imagine placing that thought on a leaf and allowing it to go down the stream, and just watch it till it goes out of view. And if you find yourself getting in the stream or getting really caught up in your thoughts, just step back out of the stream and create that distance again between you and your thoughts. All right, so just take a few more moments to practice this visualization. And if this technique doesn't work for you, you can always go back to awareness of your breath. All right, so how are we feeling now? Are we a little more relaxed, hopefully? Or maybe some of you never fully woke up if you're not a morning person like me. No, it's okay, I'm awake. But yeah, yes, very relaxed. And these are so simple. It's not like rocket science, right? But it's just, there again, trying to step outside of that rat race. And these are simple things you can do in traffic. you know, in a traffic jam, or just in those Calgon take me away moments. So, but getting to this space is pretty important before you go outside if you really want to connect with what's going on out there. And we are actually going to do that next. I think we've spent enough time in front of a computer that we need a break. And so here's our next activity. I'd like you to think of a spot outside, not too terribly far away from your door, where you can sit or stand is fine, comfortably and undisturbed. And so you will need to bring a pen and paper and something to write on. It could be a clipboard, or it could just, you know, it could be a book, or it could just be your knee. It's fine. And you're going to be jotting down your observations as well as your feelings and thoughts and just general reactions. So this is going to be just free flow writing. This is not something to be published. Doesn't have to look fancy. This is really just more for you. And as Susan mentioned, to slow down. And another interesting quote from David Sobel related to that. It says, suffering from the time sickness of trying to do too much too quickly, we infect our children with our impatience. We make children do workbooks in kindergarten. We let 7-year-olds watch Jurassic Park, and we bombard them with tragic anxiety. So that is what we are trying to do, the reverse of, the opposite of, is just slow down. And then you will need some sort of timer. I'm going to go through what we're actually going to do outside. It's pretty simple, but we've got some next slides that'll show that. But you will need to set a timer for 5 minutes for 4 different exercises. And so you can bring your phone, but please don't get on the phone looking up the bird call or whatever, the, you know, plant ID app. There will be plenty of time for that later. We're just going to be focusing on our senses. So the senses that we're going to focus on, first one is sight. So things that you see, that's pretty straightforward. You can, you know, just, like I said, just brainstorming, free flow, write list. I see Ashley's already moving. She's got somewhere she's got to be, somewhere in mind. That's awesome. And then think about different color variations that you notice. So it doesn't, I mean, you can identify things you see if you want, but really we're trying to just focus on the elements, the sensory parts of this. So different colors and shades. And then maybe somewhere during that first 5 minutes of the sight exercise, you change your perspective. You stand up, you can even belly crawl on the ground and see if that changes things for you, if you notice anything new. So these are just some tips, but you know, whatever you see is fine. You're just going to jot down what you see for 5 minutes and set your timer for that. And once it goes off, the next sense you're going to pay attention to is hearing or listening. So there again, you don't have to be able to identify what you hear. Maybe you just make some notes about the quality of the sound. You know, what is the pitch and the tone like? Is it loud? Is it soft? Is it pleasant? Is it annoying? And you can move between an active and a passive process of listening. Active being you're really honing into maybe certain birds singing, or passive could be just the wind flowing, or maybe there's a stream nearby. So just jot down for the next 5 minutes, you know, for this process, things that you hear, things that you're listening to. All right. The next is going to be touch. And, you know, the look but don't touch approach is really common, and we're going to debunk that today. So, because it teaches kids that, you know, that they should be cut off from nature. And obviously there are some, as a teacher, you may have some concerns about what they can touch and what they can't. So maybe just choose an area that you have scouted out beforehand that doesn't have anything scary in it. It doesn't have an ant nest, you know, or poison ivy or something like that. But so this is kind of maybe the reverse of what some people have learned, even, you know, ourselves growing up. Look, but don't touch. Well, touch is a very important aspect of getting to know nature. So you can just come, whatever natural objects you come across, even if it's something you see all the time. You know, you see rocks all the time, you see bark all the time. Go ahead and see what that feels like and make some notes of that. And it doesn't have to just be with your hands. It could be with other parts of your body even, and see if there's any differences there, if you notice something different. And you can just try different things with different textures and shapes, and maybe write down what kind of sensations you experience. All right, so we had sight, hearing, touch, and the last one is smell. And just like we were moving between passive and active with the hearing, we're going to do that with the smell as well. So if you just happen to be breathing and smell something, that would kind of be passive. Or if you actually pick something up and take better notice of it, that would be more active. And then make some notes. So we're going to do 5 minutes for each of these. And I'll give you, we'll throw in an extra 5 minutes just to find your spot if needed. Or if you need to like do one of those breathing exercises or just kind of get comfortable and grounded, then that would be fine too. Any questions about what we're about to do? Nope. All right. Well, let's see. It is, we'll say 10, it's 10:36 now. So we'll just say at 11 o'clock if you guys want to come back. All right. And I'll be here if you guys have questions. Enjoy. Have fun away from the computer for a little bit. Woohoo. Oh, and take a biology break if you need one. I'll probably do that as well. All right, guys, it's 11 o'clock. I'm sure it was really hard to come back to the computer, and I apologize for that. But hopefully you'll have some time the rest of the day to play outside. You know what? You could do like Ashley and just take your computer outside too for the rest of the day. That's, if you got good Wi-Fi there, go for it. So we're probably waiting on a few folks to come back. So just so that I know who's here, that there are some people out there in Cyberland, go ahead and type in your thoughts as to the first question. How is your body feeling right now? And you know what? You can go through some of these others too. What memories were triggered, if any, while you were outside? What did you notice about your senses? Anything, any new discoveries? Was one sense harder than another to hone in on? Which sense was easiest and which was hardest? And why do you think that might be? And then what are you grateful for? So any of those things you want to share in the chat, please go ahead. For those that are coming in later, I'll put that in the chat too. Please share your thoughts about these questions. Lots of contrast. Ashley, do you want to unmute yourself and tell us about that?
I actually didn't mean to hit enter. I was trying to. Okay, so
well, you can just speak then.
yeah. So I like to be barefoot. I do believe in grounding, making physical skin to ground contact and how that sort of resets your body. I know a lot of people may think that's, silly, and that's fine. That's fine. But it does work for me. So the contrast was the bottoms of your feet are very sensitive. So the leaves, walking through the leaves in order to get to the cooler grass. And I noticed that the wind was cool through, it's like a slight breeze outside, but yet you could still feel the sun kind of on the back of your neck, sort of warming you. So there was those contrasts that I picked up on the most. The sounds of the birds versus Daisy diving for a ball that she lets roll down the hill herself. Like, I'm not out there she's figured this out. So yeah, the crunch of leaves, but then this that really high pitched sound for the birds. So
that's great.
Yeah.
And your comments here are they're beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I mean, if you ever wanted to do a poetry class, this would be a great activity just to give people some inspiration. Just some free flow thought that maybe they can piece together. And there's the River of Words competition that
we did that this year.
BPD does. So this might be a neat primer for students to work on that. All right. And so Susan, let's see. First we have, let me scroll up a little bit. Kelly Jo says that her body feels relaxed and loose. You got memories of your hubby and dating. That's very nice. And then Susan says she feels calm. Smell was difficult, but headed straight to the herb garden. Oh, and you have your bloodroot blooming. How exciting. This is like the coolest time of year. I'm going to be beelining outside after this, probably just to get some fresh air. And that reminds me, I have trillium that I found on a hillside covered in ivy, and it was struggling to come up through the ivy. I've been trying to pull the English ivy, but I will be doing that for the next 20 years probably. But yes, those things are so exciting. All right, let's see. Camille feels relaxed and content, triggered peaceful thoughts and promoted mindfulness. Very grateful for your body. Yes, no matter what your body is experiencing now. I'm going through midlife and there's all kinds of sensations and weirdness going on I've never experienced, but it has served you so well no matter what's going on. If you have chronic health issues or you're super healthy, we can all be very grateful for our body and the experience of all these sensations that we get to enjoy. Jen enjoyed looking at all the trees budding and blooming. Yes. We could even incorporate this activity into a citizen science project called Project Bud Burst, if any of you have heard of that. Really cool way to observe what's going on. It studies phenology, so the timing of things in nature, and then even overlap that with something like Cornell Lab of Ornithology's Nest Watch. That would be really cool. Kind of see the timing of things budding and blooming versus the birds nesting. And then all of that data goes into a much larger research project to see what's going on in the world and, you know, why is this happening? Why is this different? And maybe there's things we can do about it or don't need to do anything at all about it. So yes, I'm so glad that you all took the time to have this session and get outside for a little while. Someone want to speak? Oh, maybe not. Okay. All right. So we're just going to wrap things up a little bit.
How'd it go?
All right. Somebody needs to be muted. I don't know who's speaking.
He texted me and said he was out at the gate in plenty of time.
Hey, Karen.
Oh, so you went down through town?
I don't know how to unmute her. Let's see.
Thank you so much.
There we go. Okay. So this graphic here is just to remind ourselves that environmental literacy is a potential to be realized. It's probably something we will develop our entire lives, so we can't expect our students to like have it all figured out right away. They're not going to be necessarily at the same space and time that we are. Just like we're all on different parts of the learning curve of life. We all have different experiences, different ways of learning. So that's important to keep in mind when you're working with your students. So, but in general, the goal of doing these sensory exercises and trying to connect people to nature is that it will foster more of the things on the right-hand side of this graphic and less on the left. So, you know, the more connected you are outside and the more gifts you get from nature, the more you'll want to give back, not just take, but give and take. So that's, you know, one example of kind of the progression that we're working towards. And this isn't meant to be judgmental at all. It's just to understand that we're all at different stages. You know, this is kind of just something to keep in mind that we're working towards. And so the healthier qualities are going to be on the right-hand side, and the others are going to be more of a novice level. But we want to meet people where they are, you know, and like I said, not be judgmental of that. I always tell people in my programming, I did not come out of the womb knowing this. You know, I was pretty untraditional for the Georgia DNR. Most of those people, most of my coworkers, especially when I first started in the 90s, they were outdoorsmen and men, I say that for a reason, through and through. They grew up outdoors, they were hunting and fishing. I didn't know nothing. I grew up in Roswell, and like I said, I had the woods at the end of my dead end street. So I was not the traditional person to be hired on, not the traditional person even to get a wildlife management degree. And I graduated from UGA in '94, and I was the only female in my graduating class. So fortunately, times have changed quite a bit. But yes, I've learned a lot. I've grown a lot since then, and I'm a much happier person for it. And that is definitely something I want to inspire others. Just share that sunshine, you know. All right, and there are some benefits too to being outdoors. David Sobel mentioned a lot of them, but being in nature definitely helps people feel better about themselves emotionally. It can lead to lower rates of depression. It enhances our social interaction and collaboration. And as David mentioned, it can even reduce risk for various chronic illnesses in children. And they just, it's just enjoyable. It can even, in a school setting, it can help children to focus better. It can improve sleep. And it can even improve problem-solving skills. But even more importantly, getting back to our environmental literacy and stewardship goals that we have as environmental educators, kids that spend time outside, or people that spend outside in general, they tend to value nature more in their communities. And if you have a stronger community and people that love their space, then they're more likely to want to protect it and conserve it. And so that ultimately, that connection there that we find within ourselves, it does blossom out. It does have greater implications for conservation in general. So it all starts at that elemental level. And yes, all of the environmental ed that we do can certainly supplement that. But as David Sobel mentioned, that wasn't really the key in the research that he shared with us. That was not the main key to changing behaviors. It really comes down to that elemental human nature relationship. That is the foundation to becoming an environmental steward and an environmentally literate person. So just kind of keep that in mind as you do your programming, as you plan things. And I've got a few other self-reflection questions here that kind of tie into what we've done today. I think we all enjoyed being outside from our different perspectives and with our different memories and childhood experiences. But there's definitely some commonality there. But we don't want to assume that all of our learners are the same as us, as I've mentioned before. So just some self-reflection before you teach an audience. So the first question, where am I in my spectrum of learning or skill level regarding outdoor activities? Are you a beginner, intermediate, advanced, or expert? So don't try to be an expert if you're not. Like that vulnerability and empathy that you have for yourself, that can be extended to your learners. You don't have to know it all. There again, we're all on this spectrum together. So it's okay to admit if you don't know it all. And a lot of times, especially if your audience is a novice learner, then it can be a more collaborative, more cooperative exploration of the outdoors. It doesn't have to be, I'm the cool ranger lady and you are going to follow me. It can be, let's do this together, and I think they'll have a much better experience. They'll have so much more fun than just, dealing with someone who's unapproachable or not real, not authentic. Like, just be real. All right, what parts of this activity have I done most of my life and therefore might be blind to the discomfort of others? Maybe you absolutely love jumping in a pond and getting all that muck between your toes and feeling fish nibble on you, but that is not necessarily going to be the case for everybody. So was there ever a time that you were not comfortable doing that? And that's actually leads into the next activity. When I was a beginner in this activity, what was most uncomfortable for me? I remember teaching pond study at Charlie Elliott Wildlife Center years ago. I had no clue. I was not one of those, ooh, let me get in it. But I became that way. It just took a while. It was a process. So anytime I'd have, third graders from Atlanta come out, I would spend quite a bit of time describing what we were going to do with those dip nets I would demonstrate for them so they would see that this somewhat normal looking person could do it and nothing horrible was going to happen. So there again, that goes back to that mentorship in nature that's so important. And yeah, they might be a little like, hey, I don't know about this. I don't want to stick my hand in that. Something's going to bite me, yada, yada. But then once they did it and they saw me continuing to do it and just encouraging them along, they were like, whoa, baby dragonfly. So yeah, but to meet them at that place where they are is important. That's, you got it. You can't skip that step. All right. And the next one, what words or questions that instructors use cause me harm? Was there ever a time when you were a participant in a program and someone was asking you to either do something or think something that was just not comfortable for you? We don't want to blame anyone or fault anyone. I think the level of consciousness of these things is obviously on the rise, which is a really good thing. So we don't want to beat ourselves up if that were the case. There again, we're on the learning curve, but just try not to do that again. Try not to repeat that. All right, what questions could I ask to assess someone's comfort level with this activity without judgment? And that's going to depend on the activity that you do. But perhaps some of these assessment tools that we went through, the sensory awareness inventory and the nature relatedness scale, could be some ways that you could lead into some insight for that. All right, and lastly, what assumptions could I be making about the person I'm with based on how they're different from me? So, you know, don't judge a book by its cover. I mean, we all do it. We all make basic assumptions based on where someone lives or maybe what culture we think we're from, but people are complex in a beautiful, beautiful way. And so we don't want to take that away from them. Instead of just getting up in front of a group and speaking, you know, getting out your game plan, whatever that is, whatever mission you're on for being there, take a moment to ask some questions and just genuinely connect with the audience if you can. I mean, obviously there's a lot of virtual going on and that's a little bit harder to do. But as you've seen in this activity, this session, we've used the chat box a lot, and that has been, you know, a good way, I think, for us to kind of learn from each other without talking all over each other, because that can be challenging on a virtual platform. So that about wraps it up. We're supposed to end at, I think, 11:25, but we have a few minutes for questions or comments. If you have any, you can either type them in the chat box or you can unmute yourself.
I just want to say thank you. This was good, and I'm glad that you thought outside the box and how to engage us with this content.
Thank you. Thanks for the feedback. I have to tell you, this was my first time doing this presentation, and I was super excited about it, but wasn't entirely sure how it was going to go. So I'm glad it's well received. And you know what? These are simple enough techniques that you can hopefully infuse them in whatever work you're doing. Maybe repackage them a little bit depending on your audience, but hopefully you got some good tools that you can use here on out. All right, thank you guys. Appreciate the kind feedback. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the day and of the sessions, and I will see you either in another session or tonight at the fun festivities that we have. So, and you know what, I'll hang on for a few more minutes if you guys have questions, but otherwise feel free to head to your next session. Or I think, what do we have? Do we have session now or do we have lunchtime right now? Let's see. I gotta look at my phone here.
It says,
oh, we have
Friday
a lunch
break.
break now.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. So maybe have a sandwich outside. So yeah, and then the sessions will resume at 12 o'clock. We've got Cracker Barrel sessions or just language about invasive species. And that's a really interesting topic too. I recently did a Talking Nature Tuesday video about invasive species. It's on the Georgia Wildlife YouTube channel. And it was interesting to get feedback from the botanist on what language they wanted to use. They're very, like I say, traditionalists. So it'll be a good session, I think. So thank you guys, and enjoy your lunch break. And hopefully I'll be rubbing elbows with you again soon.